everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the NASA SpaceX Crew-7 mission, a long-duration rotational mission to the International Space Station for NASA astronauts Jasmine Moghbeli, Andreas Mogeson, Satoshi Furukawa, and Konstantin Borisov. I'm Jesse Anderson, and I'm an Integration and Test Engineering Manager here at SpaceX, and I am joined by NASA's Leah Cheshire. We are just under a couple hours away from the final approach and docking of Dragon to the International Space Station. The crew is awake and ready to monitor the final steps, so let's recap the mission thus far.
Launch day preparations started early for our crew members. About 4 hours prior to launch, the crew completed their final medical checks. They joined the SpaceX team to get suited up into their spacesuits, and afterwards walked through the NASA operations and checkout building and made it outside to say their final farewells to their friends and family. We heard several different languages there. This is our fully international crew. The next destination for the crew was the launch pad. This was about a 20-minute ride in the Teslas to pad 39A, where the Falcon 9 and Dragon spacecraft were waiting for them. About 2.5 hours before launch, the crew ingressed or entered the Crew Dragon spacecraft, walking over that crew access arm, enjoying some views of the Space Coast from the Space Coast, of course heading into the White Room and then the spacecraft.
At 3:27 a.m. Eastern Time, 12:27 a.m. Pacific, the 9 Merlin 1D engines ignited and Falcon 9 lifted off from Space Launch Complex 39A, marking the 11th time humans rode Dragon into orbit. With Falcon 9 first stage at full power, our crew began their journey to the International Space Station. Just after T+9 minutes, the first stage landed at landing zone 1, and a couple minutes.
Dragon, check on the big loop.
Have you 5x5, Jaws?
I have you the same. Dragon, check on the big loop.
Loud and clear, Jaws. How me?
I have you the same. Station, Dragon on the big loop, check.
Dragon, station has you loud and clear. How me?
Dragon has you loud and clear as well.
Jaws, tally ho, you guys are looking good. Great to hear your voice.
You as well. We had a nice view of you with the moon earlier today.
That sounds amazing. I love it.
Love to hear that. So that was a lot of different voices, and you heard the term the big loop. So the big loop is up. That means this is a communication path from the ground to Dragon and the International Space Station and Hawthorne and Mission Control Houston. So everybody can talk on the same loop at this point. We will be entering integrated operations pretty soon. So you'll be hearing a lot of different voices from teams across, of course, here in Hawthorne as well as Houston, and then our space station and Dragon crew members as well. So back to liftoff last night, about 50 minutes after launch at 1:15 a.m. Pacific, Dragon executed the phase burn. This is the first of 5 major burns required to raise Dragon's orbit and position it for approach to the International Space Station. Dragon raised its orbit using the Draco thrusters over the last several hours as it chased down the space station.
And just a few hours ago, the boost burn took place at 10:01 p.m. Pacific time. The boost burn put our crew in an orbit where Dragon's apogee, or the highest point, will be 10 kilometers lower than the station. After that, we executed the close co-elliptic burn at 10:45 p.m. Pacific time. The close burn placed Dragon on an orbit roughly co-elliptic with the space station, meaning it was maintaining an orbit roughly 10 kilometers lower than the station the entire way around the Earth. That's in contrast to only being 10 kilometers lower than the station during Dragon's apogee, or the highest point in its orbit, which is achieved by the boost burn.
From there, at 11:54 p.m. Pacific, we executed the 4th major maneuver, known as the transfer burn. This is where we raised Dragon's apogee at the highest point of its orbit to just 2.5 kilometers lower than the station. Then we rounded everything out with a final co-elliptic burn at 12:41 a.m. Pacific to once again maintain a constant orbit lower than the station, this time just that 2.5 kilometers below. This is a shorter burn lasting just over 30 seconds. So now we are getting into the approach initiation and final stages of Dragon's rendezvous with the space station. This is also when we start those integrated operations between the Dragon control team here in Hawthorne and the space station flight controllers in Mission Control Houston. You've got them both right there. These teams will transition to the integrated operations about 45 minutes prior to approach initiation.
During the approach, SpaceX flight controllers will work in tandem with NASA team in Houston to maneuver Dragon Endurance to the proper attitude and initialize the navigation sensors used for the methodical approach to station. They'll also activate and test out a number of systems on Dragon, including bidirectional communications with the station using the C2V2 system. C2V2 stands for Common Communications for Visiting Vehicles. It sets up a data stream from Dragon to the station, giving another path for Dragon telemetry to come to the ground and giving an additional command capability to astronauts aboard the station.
At about 4:29 a.m. Pacific, the Draco thrusters on Dragon will fire for the approach initiation burn when Dragon is about 2.5 kilometers below the station and just about 7 kilometers behind it. This will swing Dragon up until it's about a quarter mile, it's around 400 meters, directly below the station. This maneuver will also move Dragon inside one of 2 checkpoints around the station that requires a set of go-no-go poles with the different control teams. The first checkpoint is called the approach ellipsoid. You might hear it called the AE. This is an imaginary shape. It measures 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers. It's essentially a large 3-dimensional oval. Before Dragon is given permission to move inside the approach ellipsoid, the capsule is configured on what we call a 24-hour safe trajectory. So this means that if for some reason Dragon lost control to its thrusters, it would be at least 24 hours before its trajectory would move inside the approach ellipsoid.
The NASA and SpaceX teams will do a go-no-go poll to move Dragon inside the keep-out sphere, another checkpoint that consists of an imaginary sphere around the station with a radius of 200 meters. Flight controllers use this to monitor all arriving and departing vehicles. This is another chance to confirm all of the guidance, navigation, and control systems are working correctly on Dragon before moving closer to station. It carries a similar requirement on the orbital trajectory that if Dragon were to somehow lose control of its thrusters, it and the space station would be safe for 4 orbits, or about 6 hours, rather than the 24 hours required to enter the approach ellipsoid. Once Dragon arrives at 400 meters below station, it will be at what is known as waypoint 0 and will be the first checkpoint during our approach. The vehicle can hold here at 400 meters, but if all of its systems check out, it can just continue to the approach to waypoint 1.
Dragon's move from waypoint 0 to waypoint 1 will swing it up and out in front of the station. That puts it at a distance of about 220 meters. We're going to be actually going to the top of the station today. It'll be put on the docking axis. That means it's essentially directly in front of the docking port. So the crew is headed to the Node 2 Zenith port today. Dragon has docked to Node 2 for all of the crewed missions so far. That's where both of our international docking adapters are located. They are installed for these commercial spacecraft flights, of course, as well as any other future spacecraft that use the international docking standard.
Once Dragon is only 20 meters away at waypoint 2, the spacecraft focuses on aligning its docking system with the international docking adapter. We may hear the call-out CHOP, which stands for Crew Hands-Off Point, a little less than 30 seconds before docking. At this point, any aborts will have to be done automatically by Dragon.
Of course, then we are looking forward to the grand arrival when our crew docks to the space station. Dragon will fly in and make contact with the IDA, giving us what we call soft capture. The soft capture ring will retract until sensors indicate it's time for 12 hooks to drive in place and give us the hard capture that will firmly secure Dragon to its new home on the space station. The station crew, namely NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg, will manually pressurize the vestibule. That's the area between the Dragon hatch and the station hatch. Meanwhile, umbilicals that provide power, audio, and data connections from Dragon to the station are put in place. And then it's time for leak checks and hatch opening, which we currently have timelined to come a little more than 2 hours after docking.
And we are just under a minute away from the approach initiation burn. And as we wait for that burn, what you're seeing on your screen is Mission Control Hawthorne. This is where we have the teams monitoring Dragon as they are approaching the International Space Station.
And of course, this approach initiation burn, we're using the Draco thrusters on Dragon. This is going to bring Dragon up about 400 meters below the station. So we'll be getting pretty close, hopefully getting some views of Dragon from the station and of station from Dragon. And we just heard that the AI burn has begun. We will probably also hear that call to the crew as well, potentially once it's completed, but it is about a 90-second burn. So the Draco thrusters on Dragon have just started to fire for the approach initiation burn. Dragon is currently about 2.5 kilometers below station, about 7 kilometers behind it. And again, this burn is going to swing Dragon up until it's about 400 meters, a quarter mile essentially, directly below the station. This also moves Dragon inside one of 2 checkpoints around the station that require our go, no go poles. We obviously got to go for that. The first checkpoint is the approach ellipsoid. We call it the AE. That's that 4 kilometer by 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer large 3-dimensional imaginary oval shape. Obviously, we consider this to be on that 24-hour safe trajectory, meaning if we lost control of the thrusters on Dragon, it would not move inside that approach ellipsoid for at least 24 hours.
And again, we are waiting for just the confirmation that the approach initiation burn has concluded. Dragon does have the ability to perform a mid-course maneuver about halfway through the journey to waypoint 0 to ensure the Dragon...
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, we had a nominal approach initiation burn. If desired, you can review your impulsive retreat cue cards.
SpaceX Dragon copies on the big loop and reference cue cards have been reviewed.
And Dragon SpaceX on Dragon to ground, just wanted to confirm that we will not be swapping a LiO cartridge, as you previously asked. We'll remain on this cartridge all the way through docking. How copy?
Dragon copies will stay on this cartridge.
And you can see on your screen some first views of seeing inside of Dragon. You can see the crew. And again, that is the International Space Station that you can see on the screen there.
One thing I love about the International Space Station is it is about the size of a football field from end zone to end zone, and you can see that with your naked eye. So if you check out spotthestation.nasa.gov, you can put in your location and track when the space station is flying over your area. It'll tell you when to look up and look outside, what direction it'll be coming from, and it's pretty amazing to be able to see our humans from Earth living in space. And back inside the Dragon capsule, we have everyone in their suits and seats. Looks like they are fully suiting up now, putting those gloves on, as well as we have a view of those crew access panels, those displays in front of them, pilot and the commander there in the center. Of course, Dragon does fly autonomously, but the teams can monitor via those panels. They can also send commands if they needed to the spacecraft. And tally-ho on Dragon from the International Space Station. You can see that little blinking light. That is our Crew-7, crew of 4, getting closer and closer to the International Space Station. Of course, we did have our approach initiation burn. We are standing by. We may see a mid-course maneuver. This is an optional burn just to help fine-tune that approach to the International Space Station. We will pass through waypoint 0, and then waypoint 1 will do that brief pause. I'm pulling up my data right now. Let's see. We are just about a mile from the International Space Station. So if you've ever run a mile before, you can run between Dragon and the space station. That's how close they are. Of course, it is a very slow and steady approach at this point when you have 2 spacecraft getting ready to connect. It's very fine-tuned. And I just did get confirmation the mid-course maneuver is underway. This will be a short burn. Again, just fine-tuning, making sure we put Dragon exactly where we want it before it docks to the zenith or the space-facing port on the International Space Station.
And kind of going back to what you see on your screen, much like a ship has starboard and port to that green and red light to see the orientation. Dragon and these spacecraft also have that same green and red light so that you can tell what the orientation of the vehicle is in.
You've got a live look inside Dragon Endurance right now. That's pilot and Commander Jasmine Mobelli and pilot Andreas Mogensen, just monitoring the spacecraft's progress.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Ground has pulled go for approach 0 and 1 and will enable the maneuver shortly.
SpaceX Dragon copies go for approach 0 and 1.
And those words confirming that we are good to continue the approach to the International Space Station and we'll pass through waypoint 0. Again, we expect that waypoint 0 mark to come at about 5:17 a.m. Pacific, so about 12 minutes from now. Again, they will not pause there. They will go to pass through to waypoint 1. That's about 220 meters away from the International Space Station. This view again from inside Dragon, crew monitoring as Dragon flies autonomously to the International Space Station, continuing to get closer and closer. That approach initiation burn brought us up about 400 meters directly below the station. We are now about 686 meters from the station, or about 0.4 miles. So getting closer and closer, again, looking for docking at 9:05 a.m. Eastern, 6:05 a.m. Pacific, so almost exactly an hour from now.
And we did see views of the International Space Station before, which looked like a tiny little dot, and now we are getting so close that you can really see the International Space Station there, and that's on your left-hand screen. And looking from the International Space Station to Dragon on your right-hand screen, getting a really cool view of Dragon.
And you see that glow. That is the spacecraft are both going into an orbital daytime. So we've talked about how the at orbital velocity, you're orbiting the Earth 17,500 miles per hour. You see a sunrise or a sunset every 45 minutes. So they're going into that sunrise period. That's why you saw that glow, that blooming on the camera. They will be there again for about 45 minutes. It does look like we may dock just as we get into an orbital nighttime. But again, this view on your right-hand side of the screen, the Dragon capsule itself, and then its destination on the left, the International Space Station, both have eyes on each other. And we are in the big loop, as we talked about earlier, meaning they can all communicate on the same communication network.
And we did get a go for approaching waypoint 0 as well as waypoint 1. We're just about 10 minutes away from the expected time of arrival at waypoint 0. And again, this is just a checkpoint. They do not need to stop. They can continue to pass through waypoint 0 and move to waypoint 1, which will swing it up and out in front of the space station. And it'll pause at a distance of approximately 220 meters away from the station.
Now, right now, as we speak, the International Space Station has just started flying over the state of Washington. It's about to fly directly over Seattle. So if you're in the area, it is about to cross over into Canada as well. So if you're in that area near that border, go outside, maybe look up. You can always check out spotthestation.nasa.gov to see when it'll fly over you. But it is going to pass over the continental U.S. Right now. It's flying right over the state of Washington. So I'm sure if they looked down right now, would have beautiful views of the mountain ranges there. It'll be south of Calgary here pretty shortly.
And as you mentioned earlier, you don't need a telescope to see the International Space Station. You can actually see it with the
Yeah.
naked eye. It's about the size of a football field, and big enough for you to walk outside and be able to see it pass by.
And I know they can't see me, but I always wave.
Hey, you never know.
So again, things still progressing pretty smoothly this morning. Next milestone being that they will pass through, will not stop at waypoint 0, less than 8 minutes from now. And a reminder, we are going to the zenith, or the space-facing port of the International Space Station today. They will be next-door neighbors with Dragon Endeavour, which is at the forward-facing port on Node 2. And right now on the International Space Station, we have 7 crew members. So we are going to have 11 people living and working on the orbiting laboratory for the next several days. We'll start looking at an undocking timeline and a splashdown date for Crew-6 pretty soon. But we want to make sure they get that handover time. So right now, again, 7 people living on the space station. Right now, it looks like 4 of them are having their midday meal. So on the space station, they use Greenwich Mean Time. It's just a little bit after noon there, about 12:10 p.m. A few of them are eating. Again, this is a weekend day, so technically, sometimes if there's not operations going on, they do get time off on the weekends. They're able to relax, talk to family members. Right now, several of them are eating, and then Woody Hoberg will step into the Dragon approach monitoring. He will also work on pressurizing the vestibule once we are docked.
And on your screen is a pretty cool view from the International Space Station looking at Dragon. You could see the nose cone deployed, and you can also see some of the thrusters. They're using the Draco thrusters to maneuver Dragon towards the International Space Station. You can see Earth in the background.
Yeah, right now they are flying over Saskatchewan, so south of Saskatoon. That's the view below Dragon there. And then Dragon's view of the International Space Station. So if you're in that area, go take a look up. You might spot our crew members. Again, less than an hour away from docking now. It will bring that crew up to 7 people.
And we are about 5 minutes from reaching waypoint 0. Expected time is 5:17 a.m. Pacific time.
So during that crew handover period, when we talked about, these 11 crew members on the International Space Station, we have Crew-6. That consists of Stephen Bowen, Woody Hoberg, Sultan Al-Nayati, and Andrei Fedyayev. They have been living up there for about 6 months now. And before we bring them home, we want them to be able to talk to Crew-7. We have some first-time flyers, especially on this spacecraft. So we want them to be able to show them the ropes of what's going on aboard the International Space Station. They can hand over any science experiments that they've been working on, show them any of the safety protocols. That's actually one of the very first things that they will do right after they dock. They will move into an ISS safety briefing. They get a lot of training on the ground about how to handle any contingencies or off-nominal situations. But once you get in space, it's just different. You need to do it again. You need the refresher. So it's, safety is the utmost importance. So that's the first thing that they'll do after they dock and do their welcoming ceremony for us. But that crew handover period, it gives a nice buffer for these team members to be able to share what's been happening on the International Space Station over the last 6 months with this crew who has just arrived. This view from another camera on the International Space Station. Again, this station right now is about 262 statute miles over Earth, actually flying over Ontario at this point. It's moving pretty fast. Just a couple minutes ago, it was flying over Washington State. We're now all the way over Ontario, so 17,500 miles an hour. That is about 5 miles per second. Quite speedy.
And speed is relative, so it doesn't look that fast on your screen, but that is very, very fast.
We are just a few minutes now from passing through waypoint 0. And we expect to pass through waypoint 1 as well. That'll be about 25 minutes following our pass through waypoint 0. Again, these are points built into the docking process. That way, if we needed to hold at these, we definitely can. It's a great opportunity to check out any systems, but the teams here in Hawthorne as well as in Houston have pulled go. They're not tracking any issues that would preclude us from a safe docking. Again, looking at that coming up at about 6:05 a.m. Pacific. And our Cronus flight controller in Houston is the one who is navigating these cameras on the International Space Station. So they always do a great job of getting us some really amazing views as Dragon gets closer.
Again, just as a reminder, waypoint 0 will mean that Dragon is 400 meters directly below station, and as it maneuvers to waypoint 1, that is basically swinging the vehicle to out in front of the station, and it will be approximately 220 meters away from station. And that is coming up here in just about 2 minutes from now. We're reaching waypoint 0 is coming up in about 2 minutes.
Waypoint 1 puts us on the docking axis, so it pretty much lines us directly up with that corridor that the spacecraft will follow all the way in to where it docks on the zenith port of the International Space Station. There is a pause at waypoint 2. That's about 20 meters away, so that is kind of the final check of all the systems on both sides of the spacecrafts to make sure that everyone's still go for docking. We're not tracking any major issues. They can hold there for any lighting changes if they wanted to, but not always necessary. So sometimes it's a brief pause, and sometimes they just hold to make sure that everything is checking out as planned.
And you did just see a view inside of the cabin of Dragon, and you saw our astronauts, our commander and pilot, there basically just monitoring. Dragon is an autonomous vehicle, so really all the crew needs to do is just monitor as they approach the station. There's really no manual driving or flying at this point.
This gives you a great view with the nose cone open. That's where the docking mechanism is located. That's the hatch through which these astronauts will fly through Dragon and into the International Space Station. Of course, yesterday during launch, we saw them enter through the side hatch. They won't use that again until they splash down and are back on Earth and egress on the recovery ship. So, we just got confirmation. We have arrived at waypoint 0. We are converging our trajectory on waypoint 1. So again, things continuing to move smoothly. We'll start to get a different view of the International Space Station as we're going to be going to the zenith port. So we're going to be going directly above it. We'll be looking down on the space station. So that view we have right now of the space station looking down on Dragon, it'll be flip-flopped. So Dragon will be looking down on the space station and see Earth below that.
These views are really awesome. See Earth in the background, looking almost so crisp there.
And Crew-7 was arrived at the International Space Station. We'll have people for about 6 months. We've been working doing science and research on the International Space Station. We did get an updated docking time. Just 2 minutes arriving at 9:08 a.m. Eastern Time. Literally, the system is going to change, so it's time to after we've done the OGT turn and the course maneuver. Again, past 3.0, we have 4.1, things continue to look good. So far, for Dragon Endurance on its journey to the International Space Station.
Needed to follow some procedures. As we're getting closer and closer to the International Space Station, they did have to prepare for some of the burns that enable the Dragon vehicle to get or to approach the International Space Station. So a plethora of activities over the past 30 hours.
Yeah, they also get the opportunity to eat if they want to. They have some shelf-stable meals that they can choose from. And you'll probably hear after docking, they will report out what was consumed. Not necessarily the food itself, but they'll say this many packets from this bag. Everything is so meticulously tracked in space and on the International Space Station. It can be difficult. You know, it's not the same as here on Earth. If I put something down on the table, I know it's going to stay there thanks to gravity. But on the International Space Station, we want to make sure we know where everything is at all times because it can float away pretty easily. So just reporting also what was consumed, that gives the teams here in Hawthorne as well as in Houston a good look at, you know, what is also available for later use as well.
Yeah, and on the broadcast for the launch of Crew-7, NASA astronaut Jessica Meir actually mentioned, you know, how good the meals ready to eat actually are. She really gave an ode to, you know, how cool it is to be able to bring, you know, some flavors from, you know, some of the astronauts' like favorite types of food with them to the International Space Station. On Dragon, they aren't able to heat up any of the food, but they are able to hydrate any dehydrated food while on Dragon. And then once they get to the International Space Station, they actually do have the ability to warm up food and have a hot meal. And we do have another.
Another view here from the International Space Station. Dragon is that big bright object pretty much in the center of your screen.
And there you can see on your screen, this is a view from Dragon approaching the International Space Station. You can see how close it is. You can begin to see those details on the station. And looking straight ahead in the center of your screen was the International Docking Adapter.
And this view from inside Dragon Endurance itself. So these are our 4 crew members. You can only see the commander and pilot right now, Jasmine Nobeli and Andreas Mogensen, just monitoring the approach on those crew display panels. Again, they are not making commands at this point. Additionally, at that 2 meters away from the space station, we hear the chop call, at which point they should not send any commands. Right now, we are at 23 meters from the space station, continuing to close in on that zenith port of Node 2. Down toward the bottom of your screen, you can see the nose cone of Dragon Endeavour, which brought the Crew-7 or Crew-6 astronauts to the International Space Station. So we're expecting to hear the call for Waypoint 2 shortly, where we will do a brief pause before moving in towards the docking port.
Also, a cool thing in this view is Dragon is now directly above the International Space Station, and you can tell in the view because you can see the clouds on Earth in the background.
And it looks like we have reached that 20-meter Waypoint 2 mark.
Station, Houston on the Big Loop. Dragon is on final approach and is go for docking. Monitor for steps 5 and 6 in 1.102 Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Houston Station copies all.
All right, confirmation from Amy Dill, the Capcom in Mission Control Houston to the crew that they are moving in for docking. So we are now 16 meters away from the International Space Station. Again, continuing slowly into the Node 2 Zenith port for docking today.
It's such a cool view. It almost feels like we're on Dragon approaching the International Space Station.
Space Station and Dragon now flying over Australia. And Dragon just 13 meters away. Again, a very methodical and careful approach to our docking port. Great views coming from Dragon this morning as we get ready to welcome 4 new crew members to the orbiting laboratory.
Dragon is at 10 meters.
Copy, 10 meters.
And we are just moments away from Dragon docking with the International Space Station. First will be a soft capture, and then there will be 12 hooks, deploying 6 at a time to create that hard capture between the vehicle and the station.
Dragon now just 7 meters away, now 6 meters away from the Node 2 port.
5 meters.
Copy, 5.
That call coming from Dragon Commander Jasmine Mogbelli, her first space flight to the International Space Station. Standing by for the call of crew hands-off point, or CHOP.
Copy, chop.
One meter.
And Dragon, we see soft capture complete, and attenuation will begin shortly.
Dragon copies.
And contact confirmed. 6:16 a.m. Pacific time, 261.
Arriving.
261 statute miles over Australia.
Guys, thank you for the welcome.
And that welcome coming from the crew aboard the International Space Station. Endurance has arrived with its international crew. They will begin the hard capture sequence shortly, but we are now up to 11 crew members on the International Space Station after they float through the hatch this morning.
And on the big loop, ring retraction is in progress.
Dragon copies, ring retraction in progress.
Now, again, we don't have views right at this moment of Dragon on the International Space Station, but we did see that docking again at 6:16 a.m. Pacific time as the International Space Station and Dragon were flying 261 statute miles over Australia.
And there's still a few steps to complete before Dragon is securely attached to the station. We've now done the soft capture, but then there will be the completion of the soft capture ring retraction, as well as hard capture sequence beginning, and then finally hard dock completing. Again, that will require 12 hooks to deploy. Again, 6 at a time will deploy to make that hard capture completion.
Of Of course, once we have a successful hard capture, it still is going to take a little bit before we see our crew members float through the hatch into the International Space Station and officially bring us up to that total of 11, at least for about the next few days or so. We will first pressurize the vestibule. Well, Woody Hoberg will open the station side of the hatch. He will pressurize the vestibule, the space between both of those hatches, the Dragon hatch and the station hatch, bringing that to the same pressure as is inside Dragon and the space station. It's much of what we are used to here on Earth. Eventually, they will bring the crew members aboard. Again, they will give us a welcome ceremony. We'll get to see them and hear their first remarks about their visit to the space station, maybe what the ride was like. Then they will move right into work. They will start their safety briefing with the crew, making sure that they remember all their training from the ground, get brought up to speed on the International Space Station itself. This is Dragon Endurance's third visit to the International Space Station, first on Crew-3, then with Crew-5, now Crew-7. It joins Dragon Endeavour, both docked to the Node 2 module, also known as Harmony.
And that next step, soft capture ring retraction, is typically expected about 4 minutes after soft capture. So we should...
And Dragon ring retraction is complete. The docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
Dragon copy.
And what perfect timing. Soft capture ring retraction is now complete.
As you mentioned earlier, during this time, we're also connecting an umbilical from Dragon to the station. Dragon has been using power generated by its solar arrays, also battery power. Once it's connected to the International Space Station, it can start using power from the station itself. You got a great view of those solar arrays as we were flying in this morning. And so at this point, Dragon will probably start using the station power for the remainder of its time on the space station over these next 6 months. And again, we do have soft capture complete for Dragon Endurance. We are standing by for the start of the hard capture sequence. This process takes several minutes, but it is the securing of 12 hooks from Dragon to the International Space Station, giving us that firm, secure hold.
MCS configured. Proceeding with hook driving.
And we did hear that call out, proceeding with hook driving. That is the beginning of the hard capture sequence. Again, as Leo was just mentioning, there will be 12 hooks, and they will deploy 6 at a time. So there'll be 6 hooks first. Once those are fully latched to the International Space Station, then the next set of 6 hooks will begin to deploy. And this process should take a few minutes, about 4 minutes or so, until hard docking is complete.
Again, we welcomed Crew-7 to the International Space Station at 6:16 a.m. Pacific time this morning. Here's your view inside Dragon Endurance right now over the shoulder of our commander, Jasmine Mogbelli, and pilot Andreas Mogensen. It was Mogbelli's first trip to the International Space Station and Mogensen's second. This is also Konstantin Borisov's first trip to the International Space Station. And Satoshi Furukawa is returning as well. So he is the most experienced on this crew when it comes to days in space. I believe he has 165 days from previous missions. This is the view that we saw as we were preparing for docking. It was giving us great views of the docking port itself. Now that we have completed that soft capture, we are obviously pulled into the space station. And those first 6 hooks are driving. We are, again, in the hard capture process right now. So we'll see those first 6 hooks drive, followed by the second 6, at which point they will be considered officially hard docked to the space station. We've again seen completion of soft capture as well as of hard capture.
And on the big loop, docking sequence is complete. Dragon, welcome, Vilkom, Yokoso, Dobro Pazalovat to the International Space Station.
ISS from Dragon on the big loop. Thank you so much. I have to keep reminding myself this is not just a dream. Thank you to the entire SpaceX team, to those who worked on the Falcon 9, on our Dragon, and even on preparing us, especially our training lead, Paul Weiss. We had to keep reminding ourselves that when we open that hatch, we're not walking out into the training center. I'll hand it over to Andy for a few words.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone at SpaceX as well, including everyone at our respective partner agencies for getting us this far. You know, this is the first step of the journey. The real mission begins now on board the International Space Station. We have a lot of exciting work ahead of us that we look forward to. And thank you to everyone at our agencies for preparing us. We look forward to getting ready.
This is Satoshi. It was just like a training session in Hawthorne, California, and I'd like to express my appreciation to NASA, ESA, CSA, Roscosmos, JAXA, and especially SpaceX for flying us safely to the International Space Station. Thank you.
Thanks all. It was exciting. Like my friend said, it was really, really close to what we have experienced during the training. We just had to remind ourselves that it's happening for real. Very excited, very happy to be on ISS. Looking forward to opening that hatch. Thanks all the agencies. Thanks Paul. Thanks the team. We're really excited to be here. Thanks SpaceX for this marvelous vehicle. Thanks.
And Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, on behalf of SpaceX, we want to thank you for training with us, and it's been an honor and privilege to bring you to the station today. Ground will be enabling our hardline power and communication connections. You are go to DOF suits per 4.012, and we're going to be taking cameras external.
SpaceX Dragon copies all. We'll step into 4.012 suit docking and audio configuration.
And some awesome words from the core, our core here, Shiva Bharavaj, speaking in every language to the crew, which was pretty awesome, welcoming the crew to the International Space Station. The crew also saying some amazing, kind words. That was really awesome to hear. Now that Dragon has completed the docking sequence, the spacecraft must undergo a handful of checks before we will be able to open the hatch. The crew on board Dragon will now get a chance to get out of their suits before moving into hatch operations.
That's right, and things will begin picking up inside the station too as NASA's Woody Hoberg gets the hatch on the station side ready to be open, starts pressurizing that area known as the vestibule between the Dragon and station hatches. So with Dragon docked, that's going to do it for us here in Hawthorne, but our coverage for Crew-7 doesn't stop here. If you stay tuned, we'll have NASA's Sandra Jones in Houston continuing to walk you through the pressurization of that vestibule, the hatch opening as well.
We're going to toss it to Sandra at Mission Control Houston to take us through the vestibule pressurization and hatch opening, when we'll see NASA astronauts Jasmine Mogbelli, Andreas Mogeson, Satoshi Furukawa, and Konstantin Borisov float into the International Space Station. But first, let's quickly recap how they got there. They suited up in the suit-up room and rode in the Teslas on the way to the pad, to their launch site. They then ingressed the Dragon vehicle and lifted off from Kennedy Space Center at pad 39A at 3:27 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday morning. Stage 1 came back to land on landing zone 1, and Dragon separated from Falcon 9's second stage, and then the nose cone deployed, as well as we had a few major burns, 5 burns on Dragon to enable them to get to the International Space Station, and docking confirmed at 6:16 a.m. Pacific Time, 9:16 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, August 27th.
Yeah, so now that Crew-7 has arrived, we are looking ahead to the return of Crew-6. We'll be taking you along as Steve Bowen, Woody Hoberg, Sultan Al-Nayati, and Andrei Fedyayev return home after their long-duration stay aboard the station. Our teams are assessing return dates, which will be announced on nasa.gov, so be sure to tune in as NASA and SpaceX bring you live coverage every step of their journey. Also, be sure to follow SpaceX and NASA on social media for real-time updates. Thanks again for watching. Go NASA, go SpaceX, and go Crew-7 and Crew-6. Now sending it over to Sandra at the Johnson Space Center in Houston to continue sharing the mission as the crew prepares to board their home for the next 6 months, the International Space Station. For those of you watching on the SpaceX YouTube channel, please head over to NASA TV to follow the coverage live, and we'll see you soon.
And first through the hatch is the commander of Crew-7, Jasmine Mogbelli, her first time on board the International Space Station. Next up, we have Andy Mogensen, ESA astronaut. This is his second space flight. And coming through the hatch now is JAXA astronaut Satoshi Furukawa. This is his second mission to space as well. And next through the hatch is Konstantin Borisov of Roscosmos, his first time on board the International Space Station as well. And with that, Crew-7 is successfully on board the International Space Station, their home for the next 6 months.
Surgeon? Yes, sir. The PMCs are set up. The remote parties are standing by whenever they come due, and we would like to take the ISS surgeon console on call with that. Anybody need surgeon before it takes off? Surgeon, you're released. Thank you, sir.
And if you're just joining us, Crew-7 just floated aboard the International Space Station after hatches were opened at 9:58 a.m. Central. That was following a docking that occurred at 8:16 a.m. Central. It was almost a 30-hour ride to orbit as they launched from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida at 2:27 a.m. Central. And you can see lots of excitement there. Crew going to work on securing a few items and getting everything squared away ahead of a welcome ceremony slated to begin here shortly.
Houston, Dragon, IMV duct installation complete. Go for IMV fan activation.
Houston copies. We'll put that in work.
All right, welcome over 2. When you are ready for handover, please meet your flight director on ISS safety 1 with an amber.
Flight MER manager.
MER manager.
I'm taking the MER on call. Thank you very much for a good docking.
All right.
If you're just joining us, Crew-7 had the hatches open at 9:58 a.m. Central Time following a docking at 8:16 a.m. Central. We're standing by for a welcome ceremony here slated to begin shortly. The crew is just configuring some items inside Crew Dragon, setting up the cameras and preparing for that welcoming ceremony. And this is a view from outside the International Space Station of Crew Dragon Endurance docked to the orbital outpost. Inside are 4 human beings: NASA astronaut Jasmine Mugbelly, ESA astronaut Andy Mogensen, JAXA astronaut Satoshi Furukawa, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Konstantin Borisov. They docked to space station at 8:16 a.m. Central Time, following their launch from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida yesterday at 2:27 a.m. Central.
Okay. Capcom, we'll go for Woody to proceed to Part 2 ingress activity.
Station Houston on Station Ground 2 for Woody.
Amy, with you on 2.
We've had a good vestibule leak check, so you are go for the Part 2 activity in Step 3.1.
I copy. Good news. Copy. Go in 3.1.
Let's see, ICE and ethos, now that we're in the Part 2 vestibule, any idea how long before we can open the hatch from this point?
SpaceX, Dragon on the big loop, hatches open.
And SpaceX copies, hatches open. And crew, if you could complete section 6 of 4.400, and then just a reminder that this starts the LIO clock.
And we did hear that call out that the hatch was opened at 9:58 a.m. Central. NASA NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg is now going to work to install IMV ducting to help mix the air of the space station environment with the air inside Crew Dragon. And they're also working to seal some of the LiO or lithium hydroxide cartridges that scrubbed carbon dioxide inside the Dragon capsule on the ride to the International Space Station. The crew will also check some vent valves as well, so it may just be... And we are getting views back inside Crew Dragon Endurance of Crew-7, first time since they've docked to the International Space Station. Great to see them on board. May just be a little bit more time until we do welcome them on board as they continue those preparations, but these last final checks are critical to make sure everything is good to go, since it will remain docked to the International Space Station for the next 6 months. And first through the hatch is the commander of Crew-7, Jasmine Mogbelli, her first time on board the International Space Station. Next up we have Andy Mogensen, ESA astronaut. This is his second space flight. And coming through the hatch now is JAXA astronaut Satoshi Furukawa. This is his second mission to space as well. And next through the hatch is Konstantin Borisov of Roscosmos, his first time on board the International Space Station as well. And with that, Crew-7 is successfully on board the International Space Station, their home for the next 6 months.
Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We are ready for the event.
Station, please begin your welcoming remarks.
Okay, on behalf of Expedition 69, welcome to the ISS, and it is an honor to have Crew-7 with us. Congratulations to the NASA and SpaceX teams. Amazing job once again on successfully and flawlessly getting our crewmates up here to us. So thank you so much. I'll now pass it off to the Expedition 69 commander, Sergey.
Good afternoon, everybody. Expedition 69 is very glad to greet new crewmates on International Space Station. First of all, I want to say congratulations for arriving. Congratulations with successfully flight, launch, and docking. And I want to say for Satoshi and Andreas, welcome back on ISS. This is not first flight for you, but my extremely congratulations for Jasmine and Konstantin with your first flight. You became now the real astronaut and cosmonaut, and I believe this is will be so very significant event all your life. Welcome aboard, a happy flight, and looking forward to together, work together. And Russian now. Поздравляем седьмой экипаж Дрэгона с успешным прибытием на станцию, стыковкой. Ждали вас очень сильно. Ждем работы совместной здесь на станции. И добро пожаловать на станцию повторно. Это для Эндриаса, Сатоши не первый раз уже летает. Но мои самые большие поздравления, конечно, для тех, кто первый раз летит в космос. Прилетел Жасмин и Константин. Константин у нас представитель набора 2018 года. Он первый, кто из этого набора полетел, и это такое большое событие для всего набора. Желаю двигаться дальше в этом же направлении. Удачи нам всем. Все, удачного полета. Спасибо, что наконец-то прилетели к нам. Next one.
Thank you, Sergey and Frank, for the welcome. It's so good to see all your smiling faces. As you know, we've been training together for a while for this exact moment where we could join you and continue the amazing work that's done on the International Space Station. I want to echo the thanks to all the teams, SpaceX, NASA, ESA, JAXA, Roscosmos, and CSA for preparing us for this moment. I think we represent a good crew to be coming to the International Space Station. And I know for three of you, you've seen a lot of different crew come through, so we hope you teach us how to do things efficiently and effectively, and we're proud to join this team.
Yeah, I can only echo Jasmine's words. We are incredibly happy and proud to be on board the space station with Expedition 69. We're looking forward to an incredible mission. Personally, I'm looking forward to continuing the work of the last many ESA astronauts. I have a lot of European experiments and Danish experiments, and I want to thank ESA for all of their hard work in preparing to get me here, and also everyone involved in Denmark. This is going to be a fantastic mission. And finally, just a few personal words. Til Cecilie, Emily, Frederik og Jakob. Jeg håber, I ser med. Jeg ved ikke, om I er på vej tilbage til Houston fra Florida, men jeg håber, I nød opsendelsen, og jeg glæder mig så meget til at tale med jer snart og se jer igen. Hej, jeg elsker jer.
I'm very happy to be on the International Space Station, and I'm very excited to work in this brilliant international team. 日本の皆さん、仕事場である国際宇宙ステーションに着きました。この素晴らしい国際クルーの中で確実に仕事をしていきたいと思います。
Yeah, it's possible. I'm glad that I didn't ruin this first time. Very excited to be here. It's so hard to explain the feeling of seeing these guys here floating so easily. Very excited, looking forward to long duration flight. And also I want to point out again how important it is to work together in unity. And this is International Space Station. We are the most international SpaceX flight. Right now you see 5 nationalities here, and we are looking forward to work together, continue ISS 79 and ISS 70 expeditions. Now a few words in Russian. Очень рад здесь быть. Спасибо большое. Всех очень приятно видеть. Здесь такая домашняя атмосфера. Неожиданно просторно после того, как мы летели на корабле. Очень благодарен всем, кто участвовал в подготовке к полету. Все агентства, и Роскосмос, НАСА, Европейское и Японское космическое агентство. Отдельное спасибо SpaceX за корабль, за то, как мы классно долетели. Неожиданно легко. Я ожидал, что будет тяжелее. И своему набору, вот то, что Сергей говорил, 2018 года, ждем всех здесь. Надеюсь, что будет такая передача эстафетной палочки безостановочная, в которой мы все окажемся скоро на МКС. Спасибо всем большое.
All right, welcome to the team, and great words. Thank you so much once again to the NASA team, the SpaceX team, and to all the agencies. What an amazing crew. We look forward to the next few months, and we're going to have a lot of fun together.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
Thank you, Station. We are now resuming operational audio communications.